Good afternoon. How's everybody doing? Good. All right. First, I want to give a big shout out to the University of Florida for hosting us. 161. Thank you very much. Throughout the day, round of applause. Great hosting, great speakers. I think everyone got a lot out of today, so appreciate all of that. I'm Casey Johnson, VP of Business Development for Certus Corp, an AI infrastructure company based out of Tampa and a veteran-owned and run business. So we're in the final panel. It's homecoming week. We will try to get through this, but definitely we'll save some time for questions. And everyone, if you're going into defense tech, please, ask questions at the end. As a quick survey, how many of you are doing dual-use, dual-purpose defense tech capabilities or investing in it? Okay, about half the room. So I have to read this off of a quote. So Bob Dylan said that, "I think of a hero as someone who understands the degree of responsibility that comes with their freedom." So as a retired Navy senior chief, I definitely recognize the importance of that. But I get to share the stage with three people who are either building capabilities for defense of our nation or investing in those companies. So what I'd like to do is give them an opportunity to introduce themselves, their companies, and then we'll go into some questions. Tristan?
Yeah, my name is Tristan Yang. I'm the CEO of Holocron. Even though this is defense tech, I like to say, very, very non-traditional defense background. Through and through, I'm just a poli-sci kid that really, really is interested in geopolitics, and that was what got me into this space. So went to school for that, studied international relations at Columbia, and there really built a passion for the public sector. So started out working in the executive office at the White House. That was really the gateway for me to refine my public sector passion, specifically towards national security. I'm a Tampa native, so had some really unique inroads to go work at U.S. Special Operations Command, as well as kind of use that as a springboard opportunity to get some more chops in acquisition operations, specifically in the U.S. intelligence community. And that's really where I started building a passion for defense tech, really wanting to innovate for the national interest, and really wanting to support this mission. So for me, at Holocron, we leverage AI to really process, analyze, and understand large data payloads for the national interest, specifically for intelligence purposes. And we are chugging along, building, and really proud of what we've been able to accomplish so far. So that's a quick background on me.
Yeah. Thank you. Kyle Osmond, Maxwing Ventures. We're based out of Austin, Texas, and Windermere, Florida. I personally run the fund, and I live in Windermere. We're currently on our second fund. We invest in dual-use and defense technology companies. We're about to start our third. We have 14 active portfolio companies across both funds, generally investing in the seed stage, companies around $1 million in revenue.
Hi, I'm Matthew Kibble, Dine Ventures, Dine Asset Management, clearly Australian, in the same space as Kyle, one step down on the Series A side. We actually closed the Series A last week of one of his portfolio companies. He may not know about it yet. It's good to meet him.
No about
it. Just with Tristan's interest as well with geopolitics, I mean, this has turned into a global coordination effort between particularly AUKUS, Australia, UK, US, but out to further allies. And this isn't just about the fine veterans that served and them coming into the defence tech space, but also the people that understand the geopolitical and policy, and then also the free market capitalist, even private capital markets, because we all need to work together to get it done. So.
Great, thanks. So, so what excites you about, start with you, Tristan, about what you're building, about the defense market specifically, and continuing that work and growing the capability?
Yeah, I think in general, right, the biggest thing that excites me every single day is seeing that defense is actually getting the spotlight these days, right? The huge thing is, a few years ago, defense was seen as taboo, right? People didn't want to invest in the space, and now seeing this vertical really build a robust foundation to really springboard this next generation of innovation is really exciting to see. And being a part of that is something that really gets me excited to get up every single day to work on these hard problems, to tackle these issues that ultimately will dictate the future of where our country stands in the world order, right? Where kind of democracy exists, right? These tangential things that you can ultimately kind of contribute to. Actually getting the time of day, I think is very, very exciting to see. It means that it's going to foster a new age of some really, really cool technology that's going to spring up in the next few years.
Yeah, I think the world's a really changing place. From the defense technology landscape, we've been actively investing in it for the last 5 years, and things have changed. The large prime contractors, the Raytheons, Lockheeds, the Boeings of the world used to develop all the technology themselves in-house and then just sell it to the federal government and license it, and that's really not the way it's done anymore, where it's more private innovation, and those companies are looking to acquire and work with smaller companies that are developing the technology. So, and anybody in here who follows any geopolitics or world politics, the world's becoming a different, more dangerous place with soon probably to be 3 active war zones.
Yeah, I'll just second that point, Kyle, around, the way, the primes are now running out and trying to, get their venture groups going again. There's a host of great early stage investors like Kyle and other guys who've come out of service, have teamed up with capital and going out to address what, Bradley made a comment on the previous panel about starting a company and not working, didn't know what he was going to sell. We know exactly where the holes are. We know what we need to fill. We know how we have to do that across multiple countries now, multiple zones, to Kyle's point. And so, we need to fill the gap. Free market capitalism needs to drive with policy and government supporting, not the other way around. I think we unfairly put this on government a lot of the time. Our democracies weren't set up like that. It is our role to do this, and then there's a host of incredibly talented people coming out of the armed services, we say in our country, and that are so highly and technically trained and given the right direction, and with policymakers staying out of the way, I think a lot of good things will get done.
Well, getting the operators or the soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marine Guardians to engage with the technology obviously is a key component of that as well. The procurement arm, everybody will, within the news, if you're following anything defense tech related, you'll hear about procurement reform and things like that. But at the same time, you still have to get the warfighters close to the technology, correct?
Yeah, I'll take that quickly. Yeah, so I came from the Wall Street side of JP Morgan guy. My 2 partners are ex-Naval Intelligence, the other one was ex-CIA. We have the ability to, if we are showing something with all these illustrious claims of what it can do, what hole it's going to fill for our armed forces, we can go back and verify that pretty quickly as part of our due diligence process. So we're not wasting our time on. I did plenty of VC before focusing on defense tech, and while it sounds scary to everyone, it's actually fundamentally, I think, more transparent in a way that you know how to due diligence it. You know where it's coming from. You know where it needs to go, and the TAM is obviously huge with the world the way it is now. With it's not just 3 zones. There's more smaller ones, but the ones that everyone reads about in the news is very prominent. But yeah.
Great. So within technology and defense tech, right, or within defense tech, about 10 years ago, we saw a large push towards cyber technologies, cyber capabilities, etc. 5 years ago, it was hypersonics and things like that. A year ago and currently, we're coming off of, I think, the generative AI and large language model sort of trend as we're getting more informed about generative AI. What do you all see as sort of the next trends coming into 2025 as we wrap up 2024 and potentially beyond?
Personally, I think the biggest thing we're looking at right now is counter UAS systems. So there's a lot of systems, including several in our portfolio, that are able to identify a drone. But we've done several different test use cases, and even if there was I'll give you an example, if there was a drone flying towards the University of Florida Stadium that's not a Homeland Security designated event, so there likely would be no capability to stop it. If we identified a drone with C4 on it or fentanyl or something else within 5 kilometers of that stadium, unless it was a designated Homeland Security event, you would know it was coming and there'd be absolutely nothing to do to stop it. And it's a Homeland Security threat and it's a threat in the battlefield too. So we're really interested right now on counter UAS systems that are actually kinetic and are able to stop an adversarial drone from causing a catastrophic event.
I'll take that from there, just to make a point that a lot of people think defense tech's all about kinetic capabilities, but a lot of what we're investing in is sensory, it's data, it's AI, it's everything that data collection that was referred to earlier, that data payload that becomes incredibly valuable to the armed forces is probably 90% of what we do. You know, the deal I referenced earlier, it is a subsurface kinetic, you know, swarm capability, which, you know, that's where we're going. And I only focus on the maritime domain, so 2/3 of the planet to me, that is the next 10, 20 years, that, you know, what brings our countries together is the ocean. It's a $2.5 trillion economy as opposed to the space economy would be 1.4 trillion by 2040. This is an underserved you know, opportunity in the maritime domain. We've become quite, I don't want to say inadequate, we've fallen behind a little bit. When I say we, US and our allies, on simple things like shipyard capacity. So looking at automated ship build and you know, with robotics and AI and for me, what I'm passionate about is maritime and everything. Owning that data in the ocean from hardware investments, it's...
That one might cut up for that one. So Tristan, so as a founder who's building technology for the Department of Defense, as a new founder, an entrepreneur, what are some sort of pointers that you can give to those in the audience who are looking to enter the space, potential pitfalls, and ways that they can increase their visibility within the department?
Yeah, so I think first and foremost, it's very much, if you're passionate about this space, don't be afraid to take the leap, right? You know, ultimately, you know, one of the biggest issues, I think, you know, potentially that could be a barrier to entering defense tech is it seems very intimidating, right? It seems like there's a very high barrier to entry, but oftentimes you just need to really take that leap, right? Start by taking the incremental steps to start understanding the space, right? Whether, you know, a lot of people here are still in college, right? Whether that's, you know, signing up for your first internship, right? You know, that oftentimes kind of paves the path for you to get a security clearance and start learning more about what it's like to, you know, dip your toes in this space. And, you know, that can culminate over time and snowball into, you know, more and more knowledge, right? And ultimately, if you want to become a founder, right, that ultimately sets the precedent on how you can get there, right? I think one of the biggest kind of blind spots that I think a lot of people don't necessarily think about these days is, you know, and this was mentioned earlier, right, you know, how do you actually sell to the government? I think ultimately too many people shake the fist and say, hey, right, you know, the government doesn't know how to buy things, right? And you know, you get this 100%, right? You know, FAR needs overhaul, FAR needs, you know, reform, but the huge thing is ultimately it's still on the onus on the technology to learn how to sell to government. Right, and that's the biggest thing, right? So everybody needs to at least have a little bit of an understanding on how does acquisitions work, right? You don't need to have the largest or the longest Rolodex, you know, on the planet, but you need to be able to at least, you know, kind of understand, hey, right, you know, am I going to go, you know, how do I cycle through the colors and right? How do I actually transition this to a program so that this has long-term feasibility, opposed to something that's just going to fizzle out in a few years? Right? And you know, as you guys mentioned, right, you know, anything from software to, you know, counter UAS hardware and software, right? You know, it requires a little bit of understanding on how best to kind of wiggle your way into that space before you can actually think about scaling. But you know, that's my opinion, and you know, a lot of that comes from, you know, kind of personal experience in the space as well. So.
Well, even when you're selling, so whether you're selling to the government or to a corporation or another company, helping them walk through how to buy, whether you're selling to IBM or to Special Operations Command, if you have the knowledge of how they can acquire your capabilities, obviously the better, right? Oh, connecting to this person, I'll make it seamless for you, and all you have to do is just field the technology. Right?
No, absolutely. I think, it's always about securing that first foothold, right? Sometimes it's a little bit relationship driven. Sometimes you gotta find a little bit of, ways to kind of sneak in there, but ultimately that's what really drives that momentum afterwards. And, that's the most exciting part of the game, right? So.
Yeah, and just to add, a lot of you will hear that the term dual use. It is a term, I think to have softened people's approach to defense investing, so they can feel good that it's got a commercial application. But at the end of the day, I started as an M&A banker on Wall Street, and if we're just selling to the 6 major primes or the US government or the Aussie government, or by being dual use and having commercial applications, we have a whole universe out there we can sell to. Obviously, there'll always be CFIUS, requirements and whatnot, but it's just another positive way to look at dual use. And then to point to not cold calling, but opening the conversation, you're always going to have to do it, whether you're someone like me as a venture capitalist. I have to ring LPs and do that. If you're a portfolio company, you have to ring us and do that. And if you're looking to sell to someone, you're going to have to do that as well. So it's just a fundamental part of your existence as an entrepreneur, whether you're on the fund side or the portfolio company side.
So it doesn't matter whether it's commercial or government, it's still 2x4 on the back of the head, right? So where do you all feel industry can best help the soldiers, sailors, airmen and Marines and Guardians in fielding technology?
Yeah, a lot of it's listening to the warfighter and what's best. I mean, there's a lot of programs like AFWorks and NavalX and DARPA out there that their really job has been to kind of communicate with the people actually in the battlefield and say, hey, what are capabilities we wish we had, or what are capabilities that we think are possible, and then going out and sourcing those. I will mention I was on a panel at Fed Supernova, big defense event in Austin. AFWorks told me that they funded 1,100 companies last year to the tune of $1.1 billion. So there's a lot of ideas out there that we're looking for. It's kind of tough as it gets narrowed down, because there's things that they fund initially that they don't end up needing or don't end up being interested in as you get further up the chain and down the ladder. But I think the best way to do that is engage with the government partners and kind of talk to them about what they're seeing in the battlefield and what their needs are.
I'll just add to that as well. It's not always, you don't have to build your company focused on defense. A lot of the time, an application is created that wasn't initially, intended for defense, but it is identified as something that could really help the armed forces. So.
I think one thing to piggyback off of all of that as well, I think ultimately, right, a lot of people these days, they are absolutely trying to listen to the end users, but I think also people sometimes lose sight of who the customer is as well in the government. You have the people that actually use the product, use the software, use ultimately what you're delivering, but you also need to be able to keep in mind, right? There's a program manager at the end of that, right? There's somebody that you need to think about long term, to really kind of get in the right sites so that you're not losing sight of what the goal is, right? Because I think one of the biggest pitfalls right now is people are building absolutely amazing technology, but if they can't get it across the valley of death, if they can't get it kind of over that finish line, that's all it's going to be. It's going to be cool technology, but if people aren't using it, if it's not fielded, right, what use is that?
And I'll just add to that as well. That's on the tech side. The valley of death, very, very prevalent on the capital side as well. We collectively as nations have to get private capital markets comfortable with investing in this space before it's too late. The one advantage we do have over some of our non-allies is that we do have very strong free market capitalist democracies, and that once it starts working and once the finance, the private markets get behind, we're not going to see as much in the valley of death, and we're going to see government playing more of a support role as opposed to getting all these things through the valley of death. And I think that's a collective where as a society we have to do that.
Yeah, the valley of death being basically crossing that chasm, right, that everybody talks about. So for those who aren't used to selling in defense tech, that's what we talk about. So anybody out here who is selling into defense tech or selling into the defense industry, how many of you know the length of the sales cycle? Back there, what is it about? Average?
Minimum 18 months.
Yeah, 12 to 18 months, right? So that is from the first meeting to potentially a sale. So there's a lot of adversity that comes with that, a lot of pushing, driving, selling into government. You usually get the, I'm very busy, I don't have time, I'll get to you, and things like that. So as, for new entrepreneurs in this space, what are your recommendations, the three of you, on sort of maintaining that resiliency and being able to, you know, as we've heard all day about just grit, push, drive, etc., just working in the defense space?
I think part of it is, don't be afraid to be annoying, right? Your program manager or your customer will tell you, right, hey, I'm busy, but the persistence is important, right? You need to be able to say, right, like, hey, let's schedule time next week and talk about this, right? Because they're not going to be driving the ship, right? They are way too busy, managing a lot of different products, a lot of different projects to be thinking all at once about this specific thing. So the persistence of being able to stay on track with that, I think is the most critical thing, right? Palm cycle is 2 years, right? You need to be able to kind of stay on that course, stay on that track, to really stay on that schedule, to kind of get across it.
Yeah, I think one thing too, you pointed out how long the procurement cycle is on the defense side, on the government contracting side. That's where the dual use comes in, right? There's a commercial side that moves a lot faster than the government. And the government as a customer, the CEO with the government, US government changes every 4 or 8 years, and sometimes the employees change every 2. So it can be a volatile customer to have, and that's where I think a lot of companies miss on the dual use side, is make sure you have a commercial application too that can sell.
Yeah, I mean, with like these guys on that, can't stress enough having the commercial applications, viable commercial applications, and obviously sometimes products have to be split for various security reasons, but that's how you're going to get through. And I think that I would add that the government is, I don't know if you saw last week, OSC announced a bucket of money. They've actually got a lot faster on issuing to the venture capital funds, but they've created a bucket for the manufacturing industry now, and their process is getting faster and faster. That when they were first selecting the funds for their fund program, it was 18 months minimum. Now the last one got done in a couple of months. So they've got much better.
Yeah, and they're putting priorities on that, and that's the Office of Strategic Capital. So that's the questions that I have for them. Do we have any questions in the audience for any of the panelists?
My name's Drew. Nice to meet you guys again. Appreciate you guys for coming out. How would you guys touched on it a little bit, but how would you recommend as a new starter actually going about navigating through that defense contract kind of deal with the military?
I would say either one, hire somebody who's been through the process before, or two, there's good companies out there like Cyber Advisors, works with early stage companies to help them with the government procurement process and there's other ones out there too. There's just one I happen to know and worked with in the past that'll help companies understand what are the government funding, non-dilutive applications out there, what are the procurement options for them, and help you walk through those and apply for those opportunities.
Yeah, and there's ask questions. LinkedIn's a great resource to find people who are doing this. This is Certus Corp, my 7th company. The Palantir data miner before, been through this multiple times. I think that you nailed it. You hit the nail on the head with that, but also just asking questions within the space. Find people who have been doing this for many years, and find the people in the government who are willing to share those comments and attend the conventions and things like that. When you start talking to the small business offices, you start talking to the offices who are the buyers, you'll get a better understanding of what that process looks like in general.
So as entrepreneurs in the space and investors in the space, it appears you're in a really enviable position that the primes are incapable of being nimble and going into projects that may start small. Do you feel that there's a very long runway to outcompete the primes as the DoD is really embracing new tech, or do you think they're going to catch up just by trying to gobble up companies and throw money in?
Yeah, I would never say that directly about a prime, but they have find a way of always find a way of getting what they want. But you know, the last 3 deals we've done, they're all co-invest with the primes, and that's Series A. So they're not sitting around waiting to gobble these things up. They're investing with us at these stages to monitor it. You have to be very careful not to get into you don't want to go into a deal where one prime has an exclusive relationship, because, you know, you don't want that, you don't want to lose that control. You want to keep it, you know, as many possible outcomes as possible, so I don't know if you...
Yeah, no, I don't think the primes actually want to develop technology anymore. I think they want to get involved, like you were saying, in the Series A stage and co-invest in these things and follow their growth, because I mean the cost of developing a new technology is just massive, and there's no rainbow, you know, there's not always a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. Sometimes it gets shelved, and they don't want to take that risk.
I think from an early stage startup perspective, I think the way that I frame it is the primes are not your competition in the very beginning, right? At the end of the day, they have more capture, they have more BD capabilities than you, and you know, at the end of the day, you know, they are not going to innovate as fast, and so therefore, right, you know, they have an incentive to bring you on as a sub, right? To partner with you, you know, as long as you're not forking over your IP rights, as long as you know you're not putting a nail in your own coffin, right? You should absolutely leverage that in the beginning, right? You're not sitting on your own, you know, facility clearance. You don't have a lot of this in-house. The primes give you at least a kind of stopgap until you can really prime these vehicles yourself. And I think that's a good way to start, right? It's obviously not the long-term solution. It's not where you want to be 5 years down the road, you know, depending on the type of business that you're trying to run. But you know, if you want to be venture-backed, if you want to be venture scale, right, you need to think of a way out of that, right? And you need to find that escape velocity. But you know, if you know kind of, you know, hey, this is what I'm planning on doing with the prime, I'm going to, you know, be a sub for, you know, X, Y, and Z vehicles, and then afterwards have intent and a plan to kind of get out of that, you know, absolutely, right, go for it. And you know, that's my perspective.
Another one over here.
Hi, Walt Adams. I would differ. The sales cycle, I think, is 18 to 24 months in the government. You know, your capture start, if you start your capture before, after 24 months, you're not going to make it, your odds go down. But my question is, PE and VC are starting to get interested again in the defense community and sector. The problem is, with that long sales cycle, around 12 months, they don't see a return. Around 18 months, they get nervous and start cutting the staff that has been working on the capture and the proposal and probably are pending award. And then at 24 months, it comes to an award, and they've emasculated a lot of the infrastructure. So just lack of patience, lack of understanding of the sales cycle in the government. How are you seeing that, and how do you deal with that? Do you deal with it differently, and if so, how do you think about it?
Yeah, I think, you know, I'm not sure if Matt's going to agree with me, but I don't know. We've never told the company to cut their staff. I mean, most of the companies in our portfolio have been successful, one on the commercial side, and two, getting non-dilutive grant funding. And that's kept them afloat until they become a program of record and actually start recognizing what we'd consider revenue on the government side. But we're pretty patient investor. We understand, you know, again, the defense ecosystem and the time it does take. So that non-dilutive grant funding can be a lot quicker and give you government dollars and government resources to show there's interest and sustain the companies on top of the equity capital.
Yeah, I definitely wouldn't disagree with that. We're also coming in on the back. He's taking more risk than us. You know, we're generally, they're already well entrenched by the time we get involved. I would still agree with him. I think everyone's coming into this sector and the dual use with very patient capital. No one's expecting for, you know, an look, most of the big hits in Silicon Valley actually took a long time anyway, 5 to 10 years. Like everyone likes to think Facebook and Airbnb, all these things popped up overnight, but there was, a decade with Facebook. I mean, so it's not like, I think, everyone's just sort of got to apply, the VCs are resilient. I don't, it's the group of guys doing what we do are a little bit different to your traditional VCs. Much more mission driven, much more the ability to do more due diligence. It's not a spray and pray type model. We need these things to work. We need them to, we know where the holes are, we need to fill them. So I think it's a different mindset, and I, for one, I prefer to invest with Lockheed and Raytheon versus A16 and Sequoia, because they're the ones that are going to add the value. So.
I think also from a founder perspective, this really shows the importance of who you have on your cap table. I think at the end of the day, right, not every defense tech VC is going, or not every defense tech startup is going to have the fortunate reality of having, understanding investors who know the space, understand the space on their cap table, and that's just the reality of it. Right, but I think at the end of the day, if you can surround yourself with people that have industry experience, right, advisors, venture partners, operating partners that have been at it, right, former SCSs coming from the government, right, people that really understand the space, then you're at least in good hands from an investor standpoint. And then obviously you need to execute, you need to be able to know where you're going, but at least you have a little bit of guidance, and you don't have extra pressure coming from your cap table and having to kind of justify and explain away something that is a very natural occurrence in this vertical.
One more over here. All right, thank you guys for coming to speak. So my question specifically for Cal and Matt, when it comes to startups that you all see coming from research labs, how often do y'all see startups coming from research labs? And then two, what is it that they typically lack, or what, how do they differ from general startups that you see in the defense?
I'll jump on this quickly because this is more Kyle's area of expertise, but my partner and our principal set up, he's an MIT engineer, sits up at MIT, he's in there once a week, seeing what's coming out of there, the way Silicon Valley was born. We're taking a big bet on the Northeast with a lot of maritime being done up in Rhode Island, Connecticut, Boston area. I personally would like to make Florida a maritime defense hub, so anyone has any ideas, let me know. But I'll let Kyle answer that because he probably deals with a lot more labs than I do.
Yeah, even the research labs, that's probably more of almost angel investing to commercialize technology off the shelf. We don't do so much of that because we like to see revenue, and most of those are kind of at the idea business formation stage, but a lot of the technology does come out of labs that we ultimately end up seeing. But we primarily don't invest at that early. We'll keep an eye on things at that stage, but it's really too early for equity capital.
That's it. So.